everybody to the Covid Convos, where we have real conversations with real people about what well-being looks like in a pandemic. And today we're missing one of our crew, Justin. He's feeling a little bit tired and sick. I guess the lockdown's starting to get to him, but I still got Simon with me. Simon, you want to say hi?
Hey, Cash, hey everybody.
Hey man, good to see you again. And today we've got a special guest with us, Cass Spong, who also lives in Melbourne with us. And has very kindly agreed to come on our show and have a chat. Cass, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? What do the viewers need to know about you?
My name's Cass. I live in Abbotsford in Melbourne. Oh, and hello everybody. With my partner Shelton and my puppy dog Cuba and cat Misty. I have my own consulting business which focuses on systems thinking and systems leadership and culture. And I am also part of a community of practice with Kesh called Systems Informed Positive Psychology. So I'm an honorary fellow at Melbourne University.
Yeah, so Cass and I have known each other for a couple of years now. And Cass has an amazing experience in a number of different places. But one of the things that always strikes me about Cass is how awesome she is in her community. And, you know, some of the stuff that's been happening in Abbotsford lately. Tell us about you, Cass. What's your day-to-day looking like now with everything that's going on with COVID? What's been your experience?
Well, first initially, because a lot of my work involves people gathering in the same room together, everything got pulled off the table basically, so postponed indefinitely, which freed up a lot of time and space for me just to really what I do, the work that I see as a systems practice. And so recognizing that our resilience comes with having strong community connections. And so Shelton and my partner had started doing some work in our community last year, really to help the community grow and connect. And yeah, as soon as stuff started to come out about the impact of the pandemic here, we jumped into immediately doing letter drops for people, just giving out our contact details. Really, I was primarily initially concerned about people who were forced to go into self-isolation. And this was before there was all of the different restrictions that we all have now. And the idea of someone being isolated and afraid, and it was when we were getting a lot of the media coverage on people panic buying. I really wanted to reach out to people to make sure that they didn't feel alone. So we did a letter drop saying we can do groceries or other errands or just speak to people on the phone. So that was one of our first things that we started doing, and people have started to contact us, just sometimes even just to chat, so they don't feel so isolated, which is wonderful. And then through that, we've also then kind of created this WhatsApp group, which is all of our complexes, like 42, 44 sort of townhouses where we live. So now everybody's helping other people who are in isolation because of travel or different reasons in the complex. We've got a wider WhatsApp group for delivering groceries to people. So as soon as they ring up our local IGA, the IGA sends through a message to this WhatsApp group of all these volunteers, and people run out and deliver things. We've got some friends in isolation, so going up and walking dogs and delivering coffees to people. And because we're Melburnians, so you have to get a good coffee every day.
There are some things that even the COVID crisis cannot stop, and that's called caffeine addiction.
Yeah, at this point in time, yes. And also we've been doing some things with Lentils as anything. And so my partner Shelton was on his electric scooter today delivering meals to people through Lentils as anything. And Lentils have started a Together as Anything campaign. And they're really quite challenged at the moment because as a business. It's a pay-as-you-feel business. So when you go in there, people are donating a little bit more than the cost of their food to be able to feed more vulnerable people. But what's happened, obviously, their restaurants, their 4 restaurants have had to close, and now they're just doing deliveries. But the amount of people that are ordering and turning up for the deliveries or the takeaway food are people who are really much more vulnerable. So, the people who have lost their jobs, for example, and so they actually need more donations and people ordering through them who can pay that little bit extra. They're servicing a huge amount of people in the community and for free. So one of the things that they have done is create an online offering. So you can actually order online and you can do it as pay as you feel. So that's for people who can't pay very much, but also those that can pay a little bit more. So please, if there's anyone who needs some food, try to go through lentilsasanything.com. And the other thing they're doing is vacuums packed meals for people who, need to keep the meal for, I think it's up to a few months, but the idea that corporates can go and buy vouchers for their people who are stuck at home, and for every meal they buy, one goes to someone who's vulnerable who can't pay. So we're also trying to help out with that. And yes, and then the final thing that I'm doing is hosting flow games online, which, yes, so can I ask me what a flow game is? So I don't.
I saw Simon wanted to jump in just before that, because I feel like, we can dig into one and then we can get into the other, because each one is action-packed.
No, go for it. I've got about 6 questions, but the first one would be, what's a flow game, Cass?
A flow game is usually something that you play in a room with another, 5 or 6 people. But I have since just recently found out that it works beautifully as a virtual game, which has been quite surprising and happily surprising, actually. So a flow game is a place you play the game to get clarity on a question that really matters to you. It's a game that's been developed to support you in your personal and professional leadership. And it's a really beautiful place to connect with others, to stop, to slow down, to reflect, to tap into collective wisdom. And I really feel like at the moment, there are so many people who are running around and just trying to get better at their productivity in this new context. And almost waiting for when this is going to be over. But I don't personally believe this is actually going to be over. I feel like this is going to change us forever in some way, and there's a real opportunity in that change as well. So an opportunity for us to for us to start to grieve and let go of the things and the patterns and the ways that we have been behaving and living our normal lives that potentially haven't been serving us and haven't served a lot of people in our community or in our wider global communities or our planet. And so I'm feeling really called to be able to offer these flow games for people as a space to just slow down, to stop, to reflect, to let go, to grieve, to start to then, and to accept where we are at and start to create visioning of where we can be and how do we need to turn up now as to lead ourselves and others. Just a big space for a huge deep breath.
Yeah, I'm hearing that, and I think that's come up with other guests as well, that it's people seeing it as an opportunity to have that pause and that time for reflection, I think, which is great. It sounds like you're connecting with lots of people, Cass, in those various things you're doing, getting around the community. Are you getting a similar feeling from those people about, this is a new sort of chapter or beginning, and we aren't going to return to the old ways, and you know, people looking forward even for, you know, or looking towards a new way of doing things or a new way of being, or is that yeah, not so much?
From the people I'm speaking to, I think there's a recognition that yes, this is an opportunity to stop a bit, that it isn't going to go back to normal. I think there's maybe a part of us that still believes it will, but I don't think that we're at the reimagining bit yet. I think there's a lot of really a need to grieve, and that hasn't happened yet. So to be able to shift any system, and you know, there is an opportunity here for a paradigm shift. There's a lot of letting go that has to happen before to even create space for us to reimagine what would be. And I think it's only just occurring to people now.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I still sense that bit of a tendency, like what you said before, of people still wanting to hold on to the old way of being or working or whatever, just that we're in a new context or a new environment, we're at home, but I still need to keep, you know, pushing things out and emails and whatever it might be. But yeah, I think it's sort of slowly shifting around to that, taking a pause and allowing that grief to come in. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
On the flip side of that, I gotta say it because, you know, we just had that experience. We had Martin on, you know, a couple of days ago, and he was presenting that other perspective that I do think is quite prevalent at the moment, of people just going, well, this is what it is right now, we've got to make the most of it, and eventually we're going to get back to normal. And I think, you know, I'm with Cass. I think there's a huge opportunity here to be able to take if we're aware of it. But I do worry that a lot of us aren't seeing that opportunity, let alone knowing how to take it. So, you know, I really hope you can do enough flow games, Cass.
Well, there are 200 hosts, flow game hosts globally. So it's so I think a lot of people are going to start to host some more flow games virtually. And maybe it's also an opportunity for some new ways of hosting to emerge, and how because at the moment it's normally, only 4 to 6 people basically playing a game.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens in this space.
Cass, I was going to, one of those 6 questions that came to mind when you were first talking that I didn't get round to, I was going to go back to one of those. Probably, I think for you and Kesh, you're well across the system stuff. I've talked to Kesh a little bit about it and have sort of a little bit of an understanding. But it might be worthwhile, well, both of you even, I'd be interested, if no one else, in a little discussion about what you mean by systems and why it's important, or what your take on it is at the moment in this sort of, in times of crisis or big change like this.
Our favorite question. Do you want to go first?
It's a very big question. So when I say systems, I'm talking about complex adaptive living systems and human systems, and that are very much interconnected. So systems thinking is kind of like it's a mindset shift. It's a different way of seeing the world. It's seeing the interconnections. It's seeing the relationships between different parts in the system. And so for many of us, we have been taught in our education systems to look at things, look at the individual parts and try to optimize the individual parts of the system to create a healthy system. However, from a systems perspective, we recognize that the health comes through the quality of the relationships between the different parts of the system. And so I guess and that we're all part of co-creating our systems that we're part of. And often what we do is we externalize the system or the problems, that it's someone else's fault. But because they're so complex and interconnected, we are all actually co-creating them in every single moment. And so the opportunity for me that I see with this global crisis is that we're raising the consciousness for people around how interconnected we are. And when we start to see that, we can start to behave quite differently and own our own role in the system. It's like the feedback loops of our interconnection have sped up so quickly, you can just see it through the growth of the coronavirus. Whereas these connections are always there. But often the impact, there's huge time delays. So there's a huge opportunity now that we can actually see that we are part of we're as vulnerable as our weakest link. So if you think about what's happening with coronavirus, if we have health systems in certain countries, so one stat I heard was in Chad, there's only 3 doctors per 100,000 population. Now, if coronavirus had initially broken out there, it would have been very difficult to control. But now, as this is a global virus, we can start to see that actually maybe we as global citizens should be investing in safety nets globally and not just trying to externalize and say we're okay over here, because we are completely interconnected. So that's, I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, great. Cass, I'm sure you've got something to add to that, mate.
I don't want to say anything for, fear of just like talking, for the next hour or more, but I agree exactly with what Cass has brought up there. And if there is a simplicity to the complexity that comes with talking about systems, it is exactly that. Is how do you see the world? Do you see the world in silos, in disciplines, in parts that can be taken apart, put back together? Are you in your role just one, piece? Is your business one piece? Or are you actually at all times thinking of yourself as completely interconnected and interdependent with everything else that's going on? And that is, I agree with you, Cass, the massive opportunity with COVID-19 is we can't ignore our interdependency anymore, So this one thing has just brought up everything. So we know that isolation on one part is helping galvanize communities and families. We know on other sides it is increasing domestic violence. We know that people being off the streets and cars being off the streets means pollution is going down. Places like New York and China that have terrible air quality for the first time in, years, have clear skies. And we also know that it was because of interdependency that this virus was able to spread in the way that it does, right? Because of clearing forests and the way that we interact with wildlife and the laws that have been made by certain countries and allowed this virus to happen. And I guess privileges of the rich and wealthy to move and travel from place to place has allowed it to spread. So there's one thing that you can't escape anymore, right? Which is that we're global citizens. And as global citizens, we need to think in interdependency. And if we don't do that, then crises like COVID are not only going to become more frequent, but they're going to become more brutal, and they're going to hit us harder. So we can learn the lesson, and hopefully we do, or we're doomed to repeat the past. Yeah.
And it would seem to me that systems are constantly evolving and changing, quite dynamic, and therefore getting back to sort of what we were talking about before, with such a big impact like the COVID crisis to the world system, it's going to give it a fair nudge off into another direction. So, it's not really realistic to think that we can go back to the old system that we had 2-3 months ago. Whether or not we had the COVID crisis, but especially now you have this big bump to the side, which sends you off in a new direction.
you know, one of the things, and Cass, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this about systems is, you know, it's really hard to change systems. Like, you know, the underlying pieces that put it together are very hard to remove once they're there, right? So a lot of our system has been created by capitalism, and I don't know if those pieces can be removed by this. In a lot of ways, coronavirus is allowing people with wealth to galvanize even more, and is creating a lot of problems for small independent businesses that were distributing that wealth. So yeah, in a way, there's parts of the system that are actually becoming worse because of COVID and stronger.
Yeah. I say that as well, Kesh. But I'm also very hopeful that, you know, the way that we can shift systems is by shifting our mindset, and questioning some of the assumptions that we've held. Yes, so there's a whole lot of, I think, faulty assumptions that we've all held that have been becoming a lot more obvious for people. And so as we start to examine those, and if we can let go of those assumptions and create a different set of, you know, beliefs, even around being interconnected, we can actually have a huge impact on shifting the system. But if we do not let go of these, that's why I was talking before around letting go and grieving is such an important thing to be doing right now if we do want to move out of just surviving to thriving.
Yeah. And I just want to, you know, acknowledge in this moment, I'm so grateful to have you on, Cass, because you've given us a perfect example of what systems thinking in action can look like at a time like this. You, together with your community and Lentils, if anything, have created your own circular economy that is outside of the economy that is working at the moment, because that economy can't serve you. So you know, using your understanding of systems and the interdependencies, you were able to come up with a solution that let go of those and was able to provide something that the community needed. So, you know, it's a perfect example of how to do that. It's not like something cerebral off in the atmosphere that only academics talk about. It's got real world applications, and you'll prove that.
Maybe, like, again, circling back to the comment before, maybe if nothing else, if no other change comes out of this, it is the awareness of systems and how we are all interconnected and global citizens and so on and so forth. So at a minimum, hopefully, that's something that comes out of it, which then could lead to further change.
Yeah. It's a minimum, but that's a huge minimum, you know.
I'll take that.
It would be, I think our organisations would look really different, our communities would look completely different, politics would look completely different, educational systems, the whole lot. You know, we're already seeing a lot more of a pull for things like a universal basic income. And people are starting to see how that could be of value. And that also means people letting go of some of these false assumptions around human beings, you know, and embracing the fact that, you know, human beings are also really creative and, you know, and have got so much to offer. And it doesn't just mean that people go on Social Security so they can sit back and do nothing, because I don't think that's the case at all. And I just imagine a world where we had something like that and all of this dormant human potential could be tapped into, and people moving from, you know, survival and Maslow's hierarchy of needs to actually be able to contribute more to their communities and to each other and to this planet. So
yeah, because they're not worried about just feeding themselves, which, you know, in a world as wealthy as ours should not be a problem. I'm really curious, Cass, and, you know, we're slowly running out of time, but I'd love to know more about what are some of the things that you think we need to grieve and let go of. And if you don't want to answer that question, maybe that's I would ask if there's anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to discuss at this point in time.
Thanks, Cash. I think I'm only just starting that grieving process myself, and it comes by surprise sometimes. So I think I too had jumped into just doing, and it was community work, and I really felt a calling to to build those connections. And then I had a day where it just hit me, and just little things like walking along and neighbours, moving a few meters apart from me, they're approaching me, just sent me into tears. And so some of those things around grieving at the moment, around how, in this context, how we're interacting. But there are so many things. And as I said, it just sort of hits me at certain points. And I personally played a flow game, and it became very clear to me that I needed also to create more space for my own grieving, and to allow it to come, and to be kind, and also to recognise that a lot of us are picking up on collective grief. So sometimes you don't even know what you're grieving. Just comes you, and I think allow space for that to happen, and not beat yourself up about it.
That's beautiful advice, and seems to be a common theme that's coming up in our conversations, which I just think lends validity and reality to what we're all experiencing at the moment. I definitely think being from pod psych, you never really think of grief as a part of well-being, right? But just more and more you're realizing how much it's a natural part of our lives, and being able to go through that process in a way that's loving and kind to yourself and others is just so important for moving forward. You can't create a future until you let go of the past, right?
Yeah. And I was just thinking, so many of us have to also learn to grieve differently as well, by being physically, we can't be physically together. Also with people losing loved ones at the moment, whether it's to the virus or other things. We can't grieve in the same way with a limit of 10 people coming together.
It's going to be an interesting one to explore together, I think, as a community. I know that's also all we have time for really today. So I just want to really thank Cass again for taking the time from her amazing work in her community, and during everything that's happening with COVID, to come and chat with us. It's been fantastic. I always love our chats. Cass?
Me too.
I'm going to ask everybody, first off, I'm going to share everything that Cass has talked about today. So if you do need food, please go to Together As Anything, support your local community and help people that need it right now. We have been talking about this thing around what does a positive economy looks like, and that's an example right there. So if you can get around it, ask you to share this, like it, subscribe it if you found it useful. I know that I did, so I will. And finally, I just want to sign off by saying, be kind to yourself, let yourself grieve, and we're going to get through this together. So you stay healthy, world.